Alex Cowboy Oliveira versus Ramazan Kuramagomedov, who's making his UFC debut. He's coming in as a slight favorite, minus 120, and then plus 100 on the Brazilian Cowboy is the return. Let's start off with Cowboy Oliveira first before we get into the UFC debutant. We got 22-9-1 for Oliveira, who's coming off a loss to another UFC debutant last time around against Shavkat Rakhmonov at UFC 254 back in October. That was a fight where Rakhmonov did a really good job in kind of maintaining his distance. Both guys were having some success on the feet. And then eventually we saw Rakhmonov lock up a guillotine choke and take home the victory there. So good one for him there. Cowboy Oliver, and then before that, he goes out there and pretty much just outpoints Peter Sabota from kicking range. Beautiful kicks down the middle, really taking it out of Sabota, especially from his cardio, and didn't let Sabota get his game going at all. The Max Griffin fight, a lot of blood in that fight, a lot of back and forth. It was a split decision, a very close fight on both guys' side. But the thing with Cowboy Oliveira is he's like this wild card, right? Like he's the guy that you don't really know what kind of fighter you're going to get coming out of the gate. Some nights he looks like his fight against Peter Sabota. Sometimes he looks like the fight against Nicholas Dalby, right? Where sometimes it looks like he has great cardio and great kickboxing and great jiu-jitsu, and then other times his cardio doesn't look the greatest, doesn't really have the greatest amount of output, and just looks more lackadaisical in the cage than anything. He seems more of an entertainer than a fighter, if anything. Not to the level of a Michel Pereira or anything like that, but still cause for concern if you have money on the guy. Now, this fight against Ramazan Kuramagomedov, this is a opportunity for him to go out there and, one, get back onto the winning track, and two, have a pretty solid welcome party for a kid that's only 22 or 23 years old, and Ramazan making his UFC debut, and not to mention on short notice as well, right? This fight only got put together yesterday, and today's Wednesday, yesterday is Tuesday, maybe even as early as Sunday or Monday, they found out that they needed a replacement, and Ramazan threw his name into the hat. So good on him for making his UFC debut on short notice. Again, against a guy as skilled and as veteran tested as Cowboy, this is a very, very tough fight from Ramazan. So where do we get him from Ramazan, right? The kid's 8-0, made his pro MMA debut in 2014, then took 3 years off for some reason, and since then has been competing pretty regularly. 2014 means that if he was 22 last year when he fought Trevor Olson, he was 16 when he made his debut. Absolutely insane that the kid was fighting that early on in his career, even his amateur career, right? It's interesting. It seems like his amateur and he had a pro fight, then went amateur, and then went back to pro. Interesting. I've only been able to look at his last couple of fights dating back to his Robert Hale fight, where we see, Hale comes into that fight kind of accepting of the fact that, not that he's going to lose, but kind of accepting that he's not going to really push the pace against Ramazan, because we saw him kind of dancing on the outside, Ramazan landing kicks at will, really letting his kicking game going, the majority of his strikes coming from the kicks as well too, whereas Robert Hale is trying to find that knockout shot with his hands. But Robert let him fight the fight that Ramazan needed to win it, and he did. Went out there for 15 minutes, continuously kicking. There's a lot of calf kicks in there, a lot of head kicks in there, and a lot of movement as well too, to nullify the strikes that were coming back his way from the Robert Hale side of things. He is the Mark Henry Dagestani compared to the AKA Dagestani, which is like more often not from the Dagestanis that you see coming out of the AKA camp. They're more so of the Khabib mold, right? They go out there, try to pursue the takedown and do some ground and pounding, compared to the Mark Henry guys who seem more so comfortable striking, a lot of flashy striking. You got the Zabit Magomed Sharapovs, and you got the Timur Valiev type of fights, and that's kind of the slot that Ramazan falls into. He has some decent wrestling to himself, as he showed in his Trevor Olson fight, but even that was another fight where we saw him a little bit tested. And the fight that he was tested in most was easily the Jordan Williams fight, as we believe that Jordan Williams is really pushing the fight to him, and not so much kind of just accepting the outside position that Robert Hale was given to Ramazan. And that's where we saw Ramazan pushed. That's where we saw Ramazan really have to deal with a guy that's not letting him get comfortable in the kicking range. And that's what Jordan Williams did. Moved forward, land some shots, couple takedowns here and there as well too. And then come that, second half of the fight, you see Ramazan starting to huff and puff a little bit. Now, obviously, when you have a fight like that where it's just back and forth, good pace from both guys, you're going to start to slow down a bit. And that's what I expect Cowboy to do here. I don't think that Cowboy is just going to sit on the outside and allow Ramazan to get his kicking game going. And I think he has good enough get up game and good enough cardio at times to truly give Ramazan troubles here and push the fight to him. And I think, obviously, Cowboy is a much better version of a Jordan Williams here. So you could have more success in terms of pushing the fight on Ramazan and maybe even sucking out that gas tank a little bit earlier than Jordan Williams was able to. Even in the Trevor Olesen fight, right? That's 2 fights removed from the Contender Series fight. And we see Olesen have success in the first maybe half round where he's the one kind of moving forward, not letting Ramazan get set and really getting his striking game going. That's when Ramazan's like, you know what, let's go to the wrestling. Goes to the wrestling, takes Trevor down, really controls him for the majority of that fight, and then eventually locks up an arm triangle choke in that second round. And luckily for him too, right? Because apparently right after that, you could see him kind of pointing down to his ankle where he's having trouble kind of just standing and limping around. And it seemed either he rolled his ankle or whatever it was. That was back in September. So he's had a solid amount of time to kind of recover from that, whatever it may have been. Maybe it was just swollen at that point in time. But, the first 2.5 minutes of the Trevor Olesen fight shows us what happens to Ramazan when he's not the one controlling the fight. And Trevor, in my opinion, was kind of controlling that fight for the first 2.5 minutes. But after that, the wrestling came into play, and then it was just, Ramazan City after that. I think Cowboy's going to make it a tough fight for Ramazan. So I'm going with the Cowboy side, but I'm not 100% confident in betting on this guy, right? Like I alluded to at the beginning of this breakdown, he's the Charlie. He's the wild card. You don't know what you're getting with him on a fight-by-fight basis. And truly, the only time I feel comfortable betting against Cowboy is when I'm getting a solid dog money on the opposition or have a very trustworthy high-level opponent that can go out there and beat a guy like Cowboy Oliveira. So the jury is still out on Ramazan. He hasn't really, his toughest fight to date has got to be Jordan Williams, and now he's getting an even tougher opponent in Cowboy Oliveira. So I'm not sold on this kid yet. The line is not intriguing enough on either side for me to pull the trigger. The fight doesn't go to decision at -130 is intriguing as well too. It looks like about half of Ramazan's fight have gone to a finish. Cowboy can be finished and vice versa as well too. I'm hoping at least so. Cowboy could potentially find the finish in this fight if Ramazan starts to slow down. But I'll lean the Oliveira side. I'll go with Oliveira. I'm trying to think about the method, but just to be on the safe side, I'll go with the decision. I think that Alex puts together more strikes. I don't think that he allows Ramazan to get comfortable. I think he deals with the takedowns pretty well. Maybe gets a couple reversals in there. But the key is making sure that he fights Ramazan and not just lets Ramazan kind of settle into that kicking range and let his game going. So if that's the type of Cowboy that we get, that just moves forward, has solid output himself too, throws kicks of his own out there as well, this is going to be a tough fight for Ramazan. And that's kind of what I'm expecting, but not with the utmost confidence. So I'll go with the Cowboy Oliveira side here, and I think he wins this fight via decision.